freestyler of the group. This is Christopher Pike. He is our Economic Development Administrator for the City of South Fulton. This is what everybody is yearning to learn more about of what we're doing in the city. So he actually came with a presentation. Give him a hand.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. Does everybody get one of these? Yes. All right, great. So there's an election going on right now, but in District 2, your council person is not up for election, but you still need to go to the polls and vote. There's two items that you need to be concerned with. One is the homestead tax exemption, and the other is the tax allocation district. And I'm going to go through the tax allocation district because that has to do with our ability to be able to gauge an economic development in the city of South Fulton. So I'm going to go through this real quick. I'll be afterwards to answer any questions that you might have, depending on how long Chief talks, and then we can get all your questions answered. The tax allocation district was created by the state. We want to thank Senator James because she had a part in making sure that we could put the tax allocation district on the ballot. It has to go through a referendum through the House and the Senate. Then it has to get signed by the governor, comes back to the city. We create the referendum that's currently out now. The citizens get to vote on allowing us to provide that. So thank you, Senator James, for your support with that. And what a TAD is it allows us to generate revenue in these districts to do economic development activities. And the reason why that's important for us is that it's not money that's coming out of the city's general fund. It's not coming out of local option sales tax or special purpose local option sales tax. This is money that's generated from the work that we do from economic development. So it doesn't have a negative impact on the city's general funds. It also allows us to have flexibility in how we participate with these projects. The state has a law called the gratuities law where municipalities can't give a gift to the for-profit sector, but these tax allocation districts, the way the law is written, it allows municipalities to participate with private sector developers to do projects. What the TAD does not do, it is not a tax increase. So just make sure we're aware of that. It's not a tax increase. It doesn't freeze the millage rate. So the millage rate inside the tax allocation district is the same as outside the tax allocation district. We don't use it to take people's property from them. So we will buy property, but we won't take property. And it doesn't obligate the city to use any general fund money for debt service. So the general fund or the taxpayers aren't obligated for the debt that's created in the tax allocation district. One of the things that we do in a tax allocation district is we go out and get what we call a bond. And we use the proceeds from the revenue that's generated from the tax increment to service the debt on that bond. But the bond allows us to go ahead and front load a lot of the infrastructure projects that we'll have to do on a specific development. This just talks about what the funds can be used for. The way the state law is written, it gives us a wide latitude on what we can do as it relates to projects in the tax allocation district. But we can do anything from construction to renovation of buildings to acquisition of land, site improvements, water, sewer improvements, those type things we can fund with revenue through tax allocation district. But the projects must be spent inside the boundaries of the district, so that's important to know. So when we set up these districts, the money can only be used in that district. A lot of people ask, well, how long does a tax allocation district last? They usually last 25 to 30 years, but the reality is they last when the debt is done being serviced. So it could end earlier than that as long as there's no obligation of debt on the district. So there is no definitive time frame, it's just when the obligations are met. All right, and why is there a need for tax allocation districts? Well, it provides us a very creative way to generate revenue. As you all know, this is a brand new city, and other cities that I came from before I worked here, they had $50, $60 million, $75 million sitting in a reserve account, and they would take some of that money out and they would invest it in projects. Well, obviously we don't have that luxury here as a city that's going on 3 years old. So this allows us to be able to generate revenue without having to use general funds to do projects. And I'm going to go into some examples of some projects that have been funded through tax allocation districts. So anybody know what this is? That's Atlantic Station. So Atlantic Station is one of the most successful tax allocation districts in the country. And so this is an example of taking an old contaminated rail yard and turning it into a high producing tax property that generates quality of life, but also generates revenue for the city. And I actually don't live too far from here, so but there's nearly 30 cities in the state that currently have TADs, and of course some of them are listed in this pamphlet that lets you know some of the projects. I'm going to go through an example of how increment works. So this is our property here. We have a piece of dirt, right? And this piece of dirt is generating $5 in property tax. Part of that $5 goes to the city, part of that $5 goes to the county, part of that $5 goes to the school system. This is about right, the percentage split on your property taxes. So when y'all fuss at your elected officials on the city side, most of your tax money is going to the county and the school system. So let's say on that dirt we build this development. So now, not only are we doing the $5, we get an additional $2 because we've built something that's more valuable than what the dirt is. So the city still gets their 95 cents, the county gets their 130, the school system gets their 275, but that $2 goes into the tag, and that's how we pay for the bond debt. So this extra money that we generate because we build a project goes to service the debt that we created to actually do the project in the first place. That kind of makes sense to everybody? Okay, everybody's shaking up and down. All right, okay. That's good. Right. So what's required to create a TAD? Well, I talked about the part of the General Assembly. We have to, by law, send up legislation that gets, as I said earlier, passed by the House and the Senate. The governor signed our legislation in June and sent that back to us. Then there's a referendum, and this question will say, shall the act be approved which authorizes the city of South Fulton to utilize tax allocation districts and redevelopment powers under the redevelopment powers law as it may be amended from time to time? And you select yes or no. And this pamphlet here gives you the rationale for if you pick yes, what happens, or if you pick no, what happens. And so I can't lobby and tell you how to vote. I'm just here to educate you. But I will say that this will go a long way to help us do those quality of life projects that everyone says that they want to happen in the city of South Fulton. We need to have funds to be able to participate, to incentivize these developments that we're talking about. So everybody says we want a Whole Foods in our community. And it's not impossible to get a Whole Foods. It's a heavy lift because we're not an ideal market, but you can incentivize a Whole Foods to come, but you need money to be able to do that. And so this helps you do those things. All right, and so these are just all kind of, one of the most important thing that happens, so once we get approved to do a tax allocation district, we will have to come and we have to create these redevelopment plan for these districts. State law requires that we can only put 10% of our tax digest in a tax allocation district. So you can't just put the whole city in a tax allocation district. We can only put 10% of whatever our tax digest is, which is a couple $2 billion. So 10% of that would be what we could put in a tax allocation district. But that plan will speak to what is going to happen in that district. And so the community gets to participate in development of that plan. The private sector will obviously have some say in that. But then that document is what we go and take to developers and say, this is what the city of South Fulton wants, and we're willing to help pay for some of this if you'll bring these types of developments to our community. And so with that, I'll answer any questions.